Renault's new Clio has the difficult job of following the success of the charismatic Renault 5, one of Europe's most popular cars. Over 2.5 million of the cheeky characters have been sold since production started 18 years ago. Clio is no exception to the recent industry trend of making new super minis longer, wider and heavier. And for this reason, Renault have chosen to continue production of the 5 in its most basic versions. Until a sporting Clio arrives, the GT Turbo will also continue to be available. Renault claimed to have given the Clio the longest wheelbase in the class, and that certainly helps stability and comfort on the road. It also gives lots of space for the occupants. However, there isn't very generous depth of glass in this design, and you feel slightly claustrophobic inside. With the teardrop effect at the back, rear vision is affected quite badly, and so is headroom for rear seat passengers. The interior of the Clio is fully trimmed. There's no bare metal on view anywhere, and that's unusual for a car in this class. Seats are comfortable, as you'd expect for a Renault. I particularly like these side rolls that hold you in place when you're cornering fast. Dashboard is pretty standard Renault layout, although the clock on the end looks a bit of an afterthought. I'm delighted to see they've retained the fingertip controls for the radio, so you can alter station and volume as you drive along without taking your eyes off the road. The boot is one of the largest in the class, and it swallows 2 large suitcases with room to spare. The high-spec RT version will have these attractive alloy wheels in Britain. The catalyst fitted to this 1.4-litre engine has definitely taken the edge off the performance. Subjectively, it feels quite slow, and by the stopwatch it takes 14.5 seconds to 60 miles an hour. That's almost 3 and a bit seconds more than the non-catalyst car. The ride is good, although if you put 3 adults in the back, the tail tends to sag somewhat and your headlights become rather high, and there isn't a headlamp adjusting device. Handling, though, is beyond reproach. It's very safe, very neutral. You really can throw the Clio around if you want to. It doesn't roll like the old Renault 5. In fact, of all the super minis, it's probably got the flattest cornering you can get. We were also impressed by the Clio's refinement. It's probably the quietest of all small cars at motorway speeds, and it should be well up to the task of taking French families to the south for their annual holidays. Greater body rigidity and a hydraulically mounted front subframe on most models are major contributors to the improvements. Renault have brought out a 1.2 version of their Energy engine for the Clio, with 60 brake horsepower available instead of 80 for the non-catalyst 1.4. Acceleration compares well with the bigger engine, although top speed is cut to 96 miles an hour. 1.1 and 1.7 engines are also available, along with a 1.9 diesel. Unfortunately, both our test cars suffered from rattles and squeaks. Renault need to ensure that build quality is up to standard, because competition is always fierce in this market sector. Some 6 years ago, Peugeot's 205 burst onto the French market and became an immediate success. So much so, it saved the bacon of the Peugeot company. Well, how does Renault's new Clio stand up against such established competition? Although the Renault 5 outsold it for the last 4 years in France, the 205 is still regarded as the benchmark car in this sector of the market. Against the Clio, it's noisier, it's less roomy, particularly in the boot, and the Renault has the edge on ride. What the 205 does offer, though, is bags of character and the promise of driving enjoyment behind the wheel. That could ultimately prove the Clio's problem. Although it's good enough to be the best car in its class, it looks strangely reminiscent of the old Renault 14 or even of a Japanese car like the Daihatsu Charade. And it's debatable whether there's enough of the traditional Renault character to sell the car to those who are used to the old 5. The sales figures will be interesting when the Clio arrives in Britain in March next year. The good points of the Renault Clio are its ride and handling, its overall interior space, and its high levels of refinement. On the debit side, there's the rear visibility, a question mark on build quality, and a relative lack of character.
Now, Clio got that name because Renault carried out a great deal of research and found the French respond much more strongly to names than they do to numbers. So